Cardinal is a quiet neighborhood in southwest Glasgow, a place where narrow streets wind past neat houses and neighbors know each other. On the evening of February 22nd, 2006, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The wind was gentle, the streetlights were yellow, and the traffic was light as usual. But in the quiet of everyday life, something began to creep in. An unfamiliar, unmarked car pulled up outside a house on Barrynose Road. No sirens, no shouts, nothing to draw attention, just a black Honda Accord stopped as if it knew exactly who it was looking for. Inside the house, Andrew Ramsay, a middle-aged man, had just returned from dinner with his girlfriend. An ordinary day ended in an unexpected way. No warning signs, no foreshadowing. Just a few steps, a few words, a few decisive actions. And then the silence began. In a neighborhood where everything happens according to the same daily routine, no one expected that right there. A chain of tragedy was set in motion. A tragedy that was silent, precise, and cold, carried out under the guise of what everyone believed to be safe: power and trust. The big question after that night: why was Andrew taken away? How could an ordinary man like him be the target of such a brutal kidnapping? Right in the middle of a residential area, under a streetlight, and in front of witnesses. To understand this, we need to look back at Andrew Ramsay. He was not a rich man, nor did he lead a complicated life. Andrew was 51 years old, an independent accountant in Glasgow, considered meticulous, punctual, and discreet. He had no criminal record, no debts, and was not involved in any suspicious relationships. Most of his time revolved around work, close friends, and especially his long-term relationship with Beverly Sinclair, the woman who witnessed his last moments alive. The two had known each other for more than 3 years. Their relationship was gentle, lasting. No storms, no noise. They often cooked together, watched movies, and chose a familiar restaurant for their weekly date. Andrew lived in the Barrynose Drive area in Cardinal, a quiet residential area in southwest Glasgow where everyone knew each other. No one had ever complained about him. Even the neighbors commented. Andrew was the type of person you could trust easily, but was never curious about others. And the image of that gentle, cautious man made the fact that he was kidnapped and murdered in a professional and cold manner all the more haunting. People like Andrew Ramsay, careful, punctual, and principled, would never just disappear without a word. Within hours of Andrew being taken away by the police, Beverly began to feel uneasy. She called the police station as they had instructed, but was told that no arrest had been made, no Andrew Ramsay had been questioned, and no police unit had been dispatched to the Cardinal area at the time. Beverly understood at this point. They were not the police, and Andrew was in real danger. Police Scotland quickly launched an official investigation. CCTV footage from the area was extracted, but the black Honda Accord with no number plates left no clear clues. There was no call, no ransom demand, no sign of robbery. The deeper they dug, the more confusing the case became. Just 3 days later, in a remote wood near East Kilbride, more than 20 miles from Glasgow, a walker noticed a strange odor coming from a patch of recently turned over earth. When police arrived and excavated the area, they found the body of Andrew Ramsay. He had been beaten to death with a blunt object. There were no signs of being tied up, but it was clear that he had been overpowered and brutally murdered. The body had been roughly buried, suggesting that the killer had been in a hurry, but had still had the composure to choose a remote and isolated location. The disappearance was now solved. But the bigger question began to emerge. Who was behind this professional killing? And why target a man like Andrew? The discovery of Andrew Ramsay's body shocked the entire Glasgow community, not only because of the brutality of the crime, but also because of the unusual nature of the victim's profile. As the investigation expanded, what puzzled the police most was not the method of the crime, but the fact that no one understood why someone like Andrew would be the target of such a targeted kidnapping and murder. His life seemed to have no elements of danger. Andrew Ramsay was a middle-aged man who lived alone, worked as a self-employed accountant, had no criminal record, was not involved in any illegal organizations or complicated relationships. All of his financial records were clean. There were no debts, no unusual transactions, and no signs of past threats or stalking. People in the neighborhood where he lived described him as a kind, quiet, punctual, and gentle person. His girlfriend, who had shared many years of his life with Andrew, also confirmed that he had never shown any anxiety or fear. His life was so calm that it left little room for suspicion. It was precisely this absolute calm that made his death all the more terrifying. It did not seem like revenge or an emotional outburst. All the signs pointed to a planned, well-concealed murder, or worse, a wrong man killing in a cruel scenario of confusion where the victim had no chance to defend himself. That evening, after dinner at a regular pub on Paisley Road West, Andrew Ramsay and his girlfriend Beverly Sinclair returned home as usual. Nothing unusual had happened the entire evening. No forebodings, no wary glances. Everything was peaceful until the moment they reached the front door of their house on Berry Nose Drive. Suddenly, an unmarked black Honda Accord slowed to a stop at the curb. Two men got out, neatly dressed, not in uniform but wearing badges and carrying briefcases. They claimed to be police officers from the financial fraud unit, said they were investigating a case involving Andrew, and asked him to come with them for questioning. Beverly was initially nervous, but when she saw how the two men behaved, calm, proper, seemingly professional, she had no doubts. One of them turned to her and said, "You can call the police station in 4 hours, and someone will update you." Andrew did not protest. He was a little taken aback, but he remained calm, as if he believed that this was just a small misunderstanding, which would be resolved quickly. He was handcuffed, got into the car, and the Honda drove away in silence. There was no shouting, no struggle. No one in the neighborhood seemed to care. It was all so natural, like a routine procedure. It was only when 4 hours had passed and Beverly called the police station that the truth began to emerge. The officer on duty confirmed that no arrests had been made in the area, that Andrew Ramsay was not on the list of people to be questioned, and that no fraud team had been sent to the scene at that time. That was when Beverly understood that what she had just witnessed was not a police operation, but a carefully staged kidnapping, and perhaps the beginning of an irreversible tragedy. Because Andrew Ramsay's life had been so peaceful and without any apparent danger, the brutality of the murder shocked the police when his body was discovered in a remote forest. Through the examination of the scene and the autopsy, forensic doctors concluded that Andrew had not been tied up, but his body had many bruises and severe injuries to the head, shoulders, and chest, clearly the result of being beaten with a hard object multiple times. These injuries did not cause immediate death, but showed that the victim had suffered in pain, possibly tortured or threatened before being murdered. Despite being buried carelessly in a shallow pit, the scene left almost no significant clues, no traces of DNA, no physical evidence, no tools of murder. From the method of the crime to the erasure of traces, the police came to the initial conclusion. This was a targeted murder, most likely carried out by a hired killer, according to a carefully prepared plan. From the traces on the victim's body and the scene of the crime, the police quickly realized that they were dealing with an organized murder, not a spontaneous or purely personal act. But as they delved deeper into the investigation, they soon encountered an invisible wall, because the perpetrators not only acted professionally, but also knew how to erase all traces. Security cameras around Andrew Ramsay's house recorded an important part of the kidnapping. At about 7 p.m. on February 22nd, 2006, a black Honda Accord without a license plate stopped in front of the house. Two men in plain clothes got out, spoke briefly to Andrew, handcuffed him, and put him in the car, all in just over a minute. There was no coercion, no screaming or signs of resistance throughout the process, because Andrew believed they were real police. However, the video quality was too poor to identify faces. The car had no license plate, and while police searched hundreds of similar vehicles in the area, they found no match. They combed through Andrew's phone records, financial records, email activity, and personal contacts, but found nothing unusual, no links to organized crime or suspicious individuals. An examination of the crime scene where the body was found was also inconclusive. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, and no tools left behind. Experts believe the killer may have worn gloves, protective gear, and disposed of the body elsewhere before disposing of it. Although Police Scotland worked with the National Crime Agency, NCA, and extended the investigation to include suspects who had impersonated police officers, no charges were ever filed, and there was no evidence to support a specific charge. The case of Andrew Ramsay, a gentle and harmless man, suddenly became the victim of a perfect murder plot. And gradually, the whole case sank into a deadlock, leaving lingering anguish in the hearts of his relatives and the whole community. Despite a nationwide and international police investigation, no one has ever been arrested or charged in connection with the murder of Andrew Ramsay. In the years since, a number of suspects have been raised with a history of impersonating police officers or being investigated for organized kidnapping. One was a former private security guard who was arrested in a completely different case, who owned a similar car and lived near the area where the body was found. However, there was no physical evidence to support a conviction. Police Scotland also worked with the National Crime Agency, NCA, to see if the case was linked to a contract killing. But again, the lack of evidence, witnesses, and DNA has led to dead ends. No one has ever been arrested. No one has ever been brought to trial. The perpetrator, or those behind it, remains at large, as if the case were just a vague nightmare forgotten in real life. It has been years since Andrew Ramsay was abducted by two men posing as police officers outside his home. And to this day, the case remains unsolved. No one has been arrested. No one has been tried. And his family still lives with a pain that has never been closed. The loss they bear is not just the sudden loss of a loved one, but also the feeling of helplessness when justice remains silent. Andrew was not a dangerous person. He had no enemies, no debts, and no grudges. His life was so ordinary that it seemed no one had a reason to harm him. And perhaps it is this very ordinariness that makes his death more difficult to accept than any other case. The case of Andrew Ramsay is a haunting reminder that in today's world, sometimes, the dangerous person does not appear in the dark, but takes on a trusted appearance, as a public official, as a law enforcement officer. It was this absolute trust, this lack of questioning at crucial moments that led an honest man into a trap. The other lesson is a lesson in vigilance, not to live in fear, but to understand that even in a civilized society, the difference between truth and falsehood is sometimes just a nod away. Andrew's family still hopes, however faintly, that one day the offender will be brought to justice. And until then, this case will remain an open wound, not only in the hearts of his loved ones, but in the hearts of the entire community.